In our last chapter, we looked at how we could take a problem and break it down into modules. In this chapter, we're going to still use what we've learned so far in the class, so we're going to be using modules again. In this one, we're going to add to that the ability to include decision structures. So we're going to take a look at the example that's on page 144. So if you will flip over to page 144 in your text, we're going to look at the In the Spotlight multiple nested decision structures. If you look at what's going on here, we have a literature teacher who is going to give a test, and that test the students can score between 0 and 100. And he wants to be able to have a little program that's going to take in the scores and translate those into a letter grade. So you see a table here that lists out the different test score ranges. So this is a standard 10-point scale and the letter grades that those translate to. Over on page 145, you'll see that we have the logic listed. So we're going to start out with the score and see if that score is less than 60. If it's less than 60, then we're going to display that your grade is an F. If it's not less than 60, we follow the false branch, and then we have to check and see if the score is less than 70. If it is, we display your grade as a D. If not, we go down and check is the score less than 80, and so on, until we get to our last test, which is the score less than 90? And at this point, we know that if it is less than 90, the student has a B, and then the only other option is for them to have an A. So we don't have to have another test here to say, is the score less than 100? We know that the score is less than 90, it's a B, otherwise it's going to be A. Notice too that this is reverse from the way the data is listed in the little table that we have where it shows the test scores and the grade. When you see something like this, you just need to think through what is a logical way to approach this, what's a way that someone's going to be able to understand what's going on, and that I'm going to get it to work accurately. So in this case, the person who put together what we see on page 145 decided to start with the lowest test score as opposed to the highest test score. Okay. We are going to use modules for this, so I am going to use PowerPoint to be able to create a hierarchy chart so that we can see what this looks like. So I'm just going to change the layout of this so that I just have title and content, and I'm going to get rid of the title and just shift this up a little bit. And then I'm going to add something called SmartArt here. So with SmartArt, I'm going to add a hierarchy chart, and let's see. Maybe we'll add just the org chart. That looks like it should work fine for us. And OK. And this actually has an extra box here that we don't need, so I'm just going to click on this box and get rid of it. And this is going to be our modules, and this is actually already set up the way we need it because we are going to use a main module. So main, and main does not have any arguments to it at all, and this is automatically capitalizing. Let me tell it to stop doing that. So main, and then let's look at what we need to do next. If you look at the problem description, we need to get a test score. Remember that we want to use meaningful names, so I'm going to call this get. Try to use a verb at the beginning of your name for your modules. So get, test, score. And then if we think about this, we're going to need to have the user input a test score, and we're going to need to get that test score back to main. So we need to think about, are we doing this by value or are we doing it by reference? Remember, if we do it by value, if you watch the little hamster video, if we did it by value, then we would just throw away whatever we got into the score variable, if that's what we're going to call it. We would throw that away after we're done and would not make it back to main. If we need to get something from get test score back to main, we need to do it by reference. So we're going to say that this is an integer. We're not going to do half points for our scores. So integer, and we are doing it by reference, and let's just call it score. So first module is going to be get test score. We're going to have an argument that's an integer argument. We're going to pass it by reference, and the name of the argument is score. After we get the test score, then we're going to have to go through our logic that you see on page 145 and determine what the grade is. So with this, we're going to call it determine grade. And again, you can name these what you want, just try to make them meaningful, and it does really help if you start out with a verb at the beginning, since your modules are all doing something. So we're determining the grade, and we need to pass into this the score. And now think about the score coming in. Do we need to do this by reference or by value? If we do it by reference, that means that we can make changes to it here and we can get those changes back to main. But really all we're doing with score is we're using that to be able to work through our logic and figure out what the corresponding grade is. So we really don't need this by reference. We can just pass it by value. And then we're also going to need to figure out what the grade is. And the grade, let's say it's a string, it's going to be a character, it's a letter. And let's call it grade. And if we think about that, we need to get whatever this is back to main. We're going to change its value here. We're going to determine what the grade is. So this one we do have to do by reference. So I hope you're seeing as we're working through and creating this hierarchy chart, it does help us do our planning beforehand so that we're going to know what to do when we start building our flow chart. Now, this one, if you look at the logic on 145, they are showing that once we make our decision as to what the grade is, it's just saying display your grade is D. In order to show you how an output module would be added to this so that we have something to do input, something to do processing, and something to do output, I'm going to change that a little bit, and we're going to set this grade variable instead. So once we determine that the grade is an F, we'll set grade to F. If we determine it's a D, we'll set the grade to D. And then we'll send that back to main, and we'll actually have another module. And how about if we call this one output grade? And if we want to output the grade, we'd better make sure that we have an argument coming into it, and we'll use the grade argument. So we're going to get a score with get test score, come back to main, then main is going to call determine grade. We will pass to that the score. We'll use that score to go through our logic and figure out what the grade is. The grade gets passed back up to main, and then main calls output grade, and output grade we're passing to it the actual letter grade, and we're going to print that out. Okay, so this is what we're going to be working with. Now we're ready to go into Raptor. Now that we know what we're doing and we have things pretty well figured out here, let's go into Raptor and get started there. So we start up Raptor. And we're starting out with our main module. So main, let's do our comments. So again, we're kind of thinking through what it is we're doing here. So I'm going to add a comment to start. And remember, you always put your name in. And this is Chapter 4, and this is Program 4-6, Fall 2012. And let's see, this program requests a test score from the user. Sorry, my typing is not very good today. And then the letter grade is then determined and output. So I think that pretty well describes what we're doing. Okay, then if we think back, we're going to need two different variables. We're going to define them here in main, and then we're going to be passing them back and forth to our different modules. So we're going to declare an integer, and that is our score. And we will declare a string, and that is our grade. And remember, these are just comments, but I'd like you to put those in just so that I know if you were going to implement this in a programming language like C++, you've already thought through what variables you need and you know what type of variables they are. So we'll say done, and we have our comment in. Let's go ahead and start here, and we will do our assignment to get our variables set up. So we'll start out with score, and score, we will set that to 0. And this is just another way that we're kind of documenting what variables we're using, since we don't really have declare statements in Raptor. And then we're going to add a string, which is grade. So to indicate that this is string, I'm just going to set it to quote, quote, which is actually nothing. It's a null, but it does determine that that's going to hold text. It's going to be a string. And then done. And now you'll remember that when we're working in Raptor, we can't go ahead and do our calls until we actually have our other procedures set up. The procedures are in Raptor what we call modules. So we're going to right-click on main, and let's add a procedure. And remember, if you don't see this add a procedure, you need to turn that on by changing your mode to intermediate. But I already have it turned on, so I can come over here, and my procedure name that I'm going to add, if we go back and take a look at our PowerPoint, we're going to create get test score, and we're going to have to pass into it by reference score. So this is get test score, and we're going to pass score into it by reference. And the way we make it look like it would in C++ doing by reference, we do it as input and output. And OK. So we've now created our get test score. And let's go ahead and say what this is going to do. So add our comment. And please save now. OK, let's go ahead and save this. So we will save this as, let me see, how about if we call it Chapter 4, Program 4-6. And always be sure that you check where you're saving it. I have this going into my assignment solutions already, so I don't need to change anything. Okay. Now our comment. Okay, this procedure requests a test score from the user. And let's go ahead and get our procedures all built, and then we'll come back and add to them what they're actually doing. So get test score, let's add another new procedure, and we'll go back and check our PowerPoint and see this one is going to be determine grade. And determine grade, we need to pass the score to it, and we're doing that by value. And then we're going to pass to it grade, and that's going to be by reference. So determine grade, and it's going to be score and grade. And you'll remember we said that score is being passed in by value, so that's just input. Grade is by reference, so it's input and output. So score is coming in, we're not making any changes to score. Grade is going to come back out because that's what we're going to send to our output for then. So, OK. And let's add our comment to this. And let's see. Let's say that this is determine the letter, grade, the score, input, the user, and how about if we say utilizing a 10-point scale. And you might have noticed I pressed enter here. If you don't press enter, it makes the comment really long. So you may do this if you want. It's not required. I was just trying to keep my comments from getting out of control running out to the right-hand side here. Okay, last thing we need to do, create one more as far as creating procedures. Let me look back here at PowerPoint because we've done this planning, so we'll make use of our planning. Last procedure is output grade, and we're going to pass to it the grade. So output grade, and we're passing to it what's in grade. And this one, we weren't passing it by reference. We only need to put it in, and then we're going to output it, so nothing's going to change with this grade. So that's all we need to do. So output grade, we send it in, we're done. OK. And add a comment here. And let's just keep this simple, output the letter grade. Okay. Now, let's go back to main, and we'll start there and start putting things together. So within main, we already have score and grade defined. The first thing we want to do is call get test score. So we want to call, and we are calling get test score. And you'll see down here at the bottom it shows us in-out score. So we need to put in parentheses what we're sending to it. We're sending to it score. So there's our first call. And then let's add another call, and we are now going to call determine grade. And determine grade, we're sending score to it, and we want to get grade back out of it. And last one. Okay. You see up here the last one we're doing is output grade, and that one we send the grade to it, and we are done. So notice how the main procedure, the only thing that we do in main is we're setting up our variables, and then we are calling the procedures which are actually doing the work. And this is really the best way to set up a main procedure. The main procedure, its purpose is to oversee everything that's going on. It's not really doing any of the work itself, it's calling procedures to do that work. So here I have score defined, grade defined. I call get test score, that's going to get the score from the user. Then determine grade, that's going to figure out what the letter grade is, and then output the grade. And you'll notice too, by using meaningful names, I can really figure out what's going on here, and then I do have my comments that also help me know what's going on. Okay, let's go to get test score, and with get test score, we need to do input, and we'll create a prompt, and remember you use double quotes around the prompt. And let's say enter your test score. And if we take a look at this, the variable that we're using is score. Okay, so enter your test score. We're going to get a value into score. That's going to go back to main. And then once we get back to main, we're going to call determine grade. And this is the one that's going to be a little bit more complicated. This is where we're going to put logic in that's going to look similar to what you see in figure 417 on page 145. So we're going to start working our way down through here using the score to determine the letter grade. So let's put in a selection structure. And you'll see that this is backwards from what we have in the book. With this one, we have true over on the left and false over on the right. Here they're yes, no instead of true, false. We'll put our condition in, and our first condition is going to be, is the score less than 60? And now we need to think about what do we want to do. If the score is less than 60, then we know their grade's an F. So let's go ahead and use an assignment symbol, because remember we said we're not going to actually create the output statement like what you see in the text. We are going to set the value of grade to F. And notice you do need to put the double quotes around. Okay. If the score is not less than 60, then it's greater than equal to 60, and the student does not have an F, they have a higher score, but we don't know what that is yet. So we need to make another decision. Now we need to decide, is the score less than 70? Okay, if the score is less than 70, then their grade is going to be a D. And we have to continue on. If it's not less than 70, then we know it's greater than 70, but we don't know yet if it's an A, B, or a C. So we're going to continue making the determination. So here we decide, is the score less than 80? Okay. If the score is less than 80, and hopefully you're getting a feel for how this is working here, then the grade is a C. If it's not less than 80, then that means it's an 80 through 100, but we don't know where it is in that range yet, so we have to make another decision. now, is the score less than 90? If the score is less than 90, then we know that their grade is a B. And if it's not less than 90, that means it's 90 or higher. So we don't need to make any more determinations here. We know then that their grade must be an A. Oops, that would not work well. Neither would that. ADE, okay? And done. So if we look at this, we're going to start with the score. We first determine if the score is less than 60. If it is, they have an F. If it's not, we have to C. We know that the score is 60 or higher, but we don't know if it's an A, B, C, or D. We just know that it's not an F, because if it were an F, it would be less than 60. So you continue through the logic down through the false branch. Is the score less than 70? If it is, they get a D. If not, we keep making the determination, and so on. So make sure you take some time to look through the logic and make sure you understand what this is doing and how it's working. Okay. Last step here is to output the grade. So we just need to do an output. And for this one, let's say that your grade on the test is, and now I'm going to put a space and double quote, and then remember we use the plus sign. That's how we stick things together or concatenate them. And we're going to add to that grade. And then I'd like to add to that, just to make this look nice, I'm going to put a period so that it looks like a full sentence that we're printing out. So your grade on the test is, this is a literal, oops, and you might have noticed what I was missing there at the beginning. We have to have double quotes around our literals. So your grade on the test is, and then the plus sign is what sticks things together or concatenates them. Whatever the current value is of grade is going to print out here, and then we add on to that another literal, which is just a period. So it's done, and we will save this. Okay, so back to main just to review what we're doing here. We set score to 0, we set grade to null or empty. We're going to call get test score. Get test score is going to prompt for the score. Comes back to main, then we're going to call determine grade, pass that score to it. It's going to create the grade for us based on the logic and send that back. So you'll see here we're testing the score and we're setting the value of grade. That will come back to main, sends grade back to main. Now the grade is going to be sent down to output grade. Within output grade, we're passing the grade to it, and in output grade, we're going to print out your grade on the test is whatever that value is. So let's go ahead and try it and see how it works here. So I think I did save this, but let's just make sure. When we're testing something like this, we can test it just by clicking our Run button here, Execute to Completion, and let's do that once just to see if it's working. And it's just going to pop through here and get test score. Let's see. Let's say the student got a 75. And we'll see it go through. Here it's going through our logic. Watch when we get to 70. Okay, we end up with the C. And we finish. And your grade on the test is C. So we see it worked, but it wasn't very easy to see how it worked. So let me clear this out, and let's come back here. And what we can do is run this through one step at a time. So this button, if we click on it, it's going to go through one symbol at a time. So here we can watch over on the left-hand side, score has now been set to 0. Grade is now set to null. Okay, now we're going to our get test score. And you can watch, here's the prompt is going to come up. Let's see, what grade would we like them to have this time? Let's say they have a, how about they did an 89? Okay, so we end here. Now we're going to go into determine grade. So in determine grade, is the score less than 60? Well, here's score. Score is 89. So is it less than 60? No, it's not less than 60. Now we're going to see, is 89 less than 70? No, it's not less than 70. Is 89 less than 80? No, it's not less than 80. Is 89 less than 90? Yes, it is. So our grade gets set to a B. And we finish this up. Now we're going to go to output grade. We're going to output the grade. And here your grade on the test is B. So when you're working with Raptor, you can do this, especially when you're testing if something's not working quite right. If you step through and use your window over here to be able to keep track of what your different variables are and what the values are that are in them, it's going to help you with figuring out what's going on. And don't forget, do your planning first. You don't have to use PowerPoint. You can sketch this out on paper. But just think through what it is you want to do. You're always going to have a main procedure, and then within that, how are you going to break things down? What are the logical things that we need to accomplish? And use meaningful names. If you use meaningful names, it's going to help you as you're working on what you're doing. If I have something called score, I know what that is. If I called this X, I don't have any idea what X is. So just think about these things as you're working, and as always, if you have questions on anything, please be sure to get in touch with me, and I would be glad to help you out. Have a great day.